So before you watch this video, just a small disclaimer. If you want to go to Saw the Experience, don't watch this video. Because not only am I going to spoil some of the elements of it, because it is an escape room experience, but also I didn't like it, which means that I'm probably going to sully your experience of it. So just right now, if you're going to go to the Saw the Experience in London, then stop watching and then maybe go and come back and watch this and see if my opinions match yours. Okay?
It's time to start our game.
There's nothing that annoys me more than feeling like I've wasted time and money. Life is a balance between the two. You either have too little time or too little money. Like you spend ages working, you got lots of money, you don't have any time, or you don't work a lot, you've got no money, but you've got lots of time. So if something wastes both, then it's obviously going to be stupidly, like it's going to be rage-inducing. On the day before Halloween, I committed my day to travelling to London to participate in the Saw Experience. I can't remember if I had any extra words on top of that. I think it was, let me have a quick look. Was it just the Saw Experience? Yes, Saw the Experience. My apologies. So I travelled to London, and I live in Sheffield currently, so travelling to London is not cheap. And the ticket I bought was about £87. So at some point, I'm going to do a massive video about how shit the rails system in this country is. £87 to travel 2 hours on a train. £87. But that's obviously not the thing I'm arguing about. The fact that I had to pay that money would be fine, would be worth it, if the reason I went there was worth it. So I've been invited to tag along to Saw the Experience. And what this essentially is, or what I was told this is an escape room. So it's a Saw-themed escape room. Now, Saw the franchise, if anyone's not seen it, then what the fuck are you doing with your life? But Saw is about people who get kidnapped by this serial killer who puts them through these tests in order for them to prove that their life is worth living. So, you know what? It's an escape room. Literally an escape. You have to escape or you lose your life. So it's the perfect format to turn into an escape room. So I was really hype. I thought this is going to be a really good experience. It's going to be amazing. I'm a fan of the franchise. Like, it went off a bit towards the end, but I'm a big fan of the franchise because I love sort of the ingenuity behind it and the twists and turns and how they at least tried to do something different with what they were doing. So obviously, because this is a branded event, it's got like a themed thing behind it, the price is going to be higher. So it cost me £34. And not just me, obviously, it cost everybody £34. And there were 6 of us in our party, so they're raking £204, is that? £204 out of the group in order to do this escape room. So you expect it to be good.
No.
Obviously, the fact that I'm making video means it wasn't good, it was kind of shit. And the problem is, so I said before going in, I was talking to my friend Lee, who was with us, and I said to him, I have spent over £100 getting here. So I need this escape room to be either very good or very shit. Because either one of those is going to leave a mark on my life. If it's very good, I'll remember it forever. If it's very shit, I'll remember it forever. If it's a bit shit, then I'll forget it. I mean, I guess by making the video about it, and the fact that I got so annoyed about it, I guess that means it'll now stick with me for longer. So, you know what, let's just go through the experience, because I think that the only way I can really explain how shit this ended up being is by running through what happened throughout. I'm not going to go into too much detail about things like the way the puzzles are solved and stuff like that. What I'm going to talk about is the reason why it was basically a rip-off, because it was what I described it as a shit amateur escape room with Saw branding on it. So you get there, and when your slot comes up, you're led inside, and they make you sign a waiver. Some of it's like, oh, these are the rules you have to follow, but the rest of it's just, oh, let's get you scared by making you think you might get hurt, even though you're not actually going to get hurt at all. So you have to sign this piece of paper, and then you're led through into another room, and you have to wait, because even though we booked 6 people for like a 6-person escape room experience, it's not just 6 people. You're actually in with 4 other groups. So you have to wait for all of them to put their stuff in the cloakroom and for them to sign their waivers, which takes like 10-15 minutes on its own. So you just stood in this barren room waiting. And the big part of the experience is that they've tried to put a plot line into it. They didn't just put you in an escape room. They have this plot line where you're basically investors for this really corrupt business. But the room you're waiting in, it's not been done up to look nice. It's just looks like something out of the fucking back rooms. And you just stood in this like blank room with a few boxes against the wall, and there's like a stain on the ceiling waiting. And we're meant to be like these $1 billion investors who invested in this like development, but no, we're stood in like it's essentially a big cupboard.
What's happened to me?
We're led through by one of the actors into another room, which again is supposed to be like this big company's lobby where we like a meeting room, but again it just looks like a shit room. Like there's nothing about this that screams we have lots of money, or you have lots of money even. And what they do is they bring you in, they take the pictures. So obviously, because it's an experience, you can buy a picture afterwards. So they take a picture of you, but for some reason, right, they do one picture where you're pulling like a happy face, and then one where you pull a scared face. And I get that, because it's Saw. So you want a nice one, you want a scared one. But for the nice one of the actors stands in it with you. Because obviously it's like, they posit it as it's a picture for the investments. So, but then the actress stands in it with you. So if you want to keep the nice picture, then there's an actress in it with you. You know, it's not just your friends. It's you and some rando that you've never met and you're never going to meet again. And then for the second picture, when you're meant to look scared, because they're trying to keep on the gimmick of it being this, like, meeting that you're attending, the assistant, because there's two actors now, there's the CEO and there's the assistant. The assistant makes some kind of joke like, oh, and now pretend that you've just watched a car crash. Obviously, so that everyone's like, we're in the same room as everyone else. So we walk away, and then they all have to come up and do the same thing. And every single time, this assistant says the same thing. He says, oh, imagine that you've just seen someone get hit by a car, or imagine that you've just lost all your money. Then every single time, the CEO scolds him. So she's like, oh, you shouldn't say stuff like that. But 4 times in a row, one after the other. Like, to be honest, by that point, I'd be like, oh, that's just him. It's just what he's like. So while we wait for everyone to have their pictures taken, we're led over to the other side of a room where there's loads of wooden puzzles. And the kind of puzzles I'm talking about are stocking fillers. The ones that are like weird little wooden things that you piece together. And if you get the puzzles in the right order, then you've succeeded. And we're led over and we're just given those things. And it's obviously to pass time while you're waiting for everyone else. But the fact that you have to pass time while waiting for everyone else means you're not getting your money's worth. And then when everyone's had their pictures taken, there's some like weird little thing at the start where we're all given a puzzle box, and you're told first team to open the puzzle box wins. What do you win? Nothing. The first team to open the puzzle box just gets kudos from the people running it. And the photograph bit and the puzzle bit and the puzzle box bit all take up another 15 to 20 minutes. So at this point, nothing is Saw related.
What the fuck is this?
Calm down. Just calm down.
When you've done this puzzle box bit and all that's over, then the actual experience starts. So far, like, because obviously they're like, oh, you know, we've got to do something while they're waiting around. But the thing that we're doing isn't Saw related. It's not really related to the thing. Like, if they'd had like this really interesting lobby room, and around the room they'd had all of these paintings with like funny tongue-in-cheek captions, just something that made it not just feel like we were being pushed along a conveyor belt while we were waiting for the experience to begin. Anyway, so a presentation starts, and credit to the people who work there. The actors did a great job. Like, they did their job well. So the CEO does this presentation where she talks about how she's basically a horrible person. She's the worst. And all of us have to stand there nodding along like we all gave money to this horrible devil in women's clothing. And she's like, well, we shut down all these orphanages, we got rid of all these churches so that you could have more money. And it's like, well, by this point, I don't want to save her. Like, if part of the puzzle requires saving this woman's life, I'm happy to let her die because she's a horrible person and she deserves whatever Jigsaw does to her. I was trying to get into it. I was trying to act the part. I was stood there like nodding along and sort of agreeing and laughing when she said stuff. And I expected the rest of it to be better. Like, I thought we were just getting into the opening stages and they were establishing the story. It's basically like the opening cutscene of a video game where you're just getting a bit of exposition before you get into it. So once this is finished, this again lasts another 15 to 20 minutes. So by this point, it's 45 minutes to an hour or something at least that we've been dicking around waiting for other people to do things and then having the story set up. Like, I can't tell you exactly the amount of time. Like, maybe it's close to 30 minutes, maybe it's closer to an hour, but it's definitely more time than it should be to get into this actual experience. We're led down this corridor because we're told we're going to go to the penthouse suite. And in order to get there, we have to travel through the construction yard, which is where the building's still being made. So you're led down this corridor, but the thing about the corridor is it's thin, it's dark, and there's also painting on the wall that looks like jigsaw writing. So if this is the corridor that leads, because we're going to the elevator here, like this should still be part of the building before we get into the actual Saw part, because we're going to be kidnapped. So why does this corridor look like something out of a horror movie? Like, if I was an investor and I went along to this place and, like, I'm being given my meeting in a cupboard room where we're made to solve kids' puzzles, and then we're randomly led down a corridor that looks like Jigsaw, like, I don't know, Michael Myers should be wandering down it with a knife, I'd be like, you know what, I'm good. Just send me my money. I don't want to attend your little party.
You haven't seen anything yet.
So we get into the elevator, and one of the only good parts in the entire thing happens in this fake elevator, where lights go out, lights come on, the CEO gets kidnapped by a pig face mask, lights go off again. So at this point, the doors open, and we now go into the actual Jigsaw part. And we're led into this big room, which is very nicely decorated. And it looks like one of the trap rooms that you would see in the franchise. So you've got the classic sort of gears and chains and mechanicalness everywhere, like fences made of metal, like grating and stuff, and obviously CRT televisions everywhere. And you're like, ooh, this feels so authentic, except there's no ceiling on it. Because obviously this whole experience is built inside a giant warehouse building. So I leaned into the person next to me and said, can't we just climb over the top of the walls? Like, we're not prisoners here. We can easily escape. There's no feeling of claustrophobia of us being trapped, because one of us could just give the other one a leg over and we're fucking done. We're out. So the screens come on and Jigsaw exposits and basically explains that our CEO is a bad person, and if we don't do something, she dies. Which I don't want to, complain about the way that they've chosen to do the story, like because that's not the main issue with this. That, like, I appreciate they tried to put a story in, but that's not Jigsaw's methodology. They're supposed to save themselves, otherwise they can't prove they've got that survival instinct. And yes, I know you're going to say, like, oh, in some of the later films, people were put in traps and other people had to save them, but I think there's a certain element of like them being able to maybe persuade their way out of it, or something like that. At no point did we feel like we were really being tested, except maybe in this first room. So the puzzle in the first room, I'm going to call it a puzzle even though it's not, is that we all had to reach through and hold onto these bars in this machine. And this saw blade was coming down, and it was like, ooh, is it going to cut your hands? Even though it definitely isn't, because they're not allowed to do that. The only thing we were all worried about is that they might electrocute us, but they never did that. So, I guess we create our own fear. But we hold on to these things, and Jigsaw's like, if any of you let go, you will fail and your CEO will die. It's like, so what if all of us just let go? Are they going to be like, well, you failed, you can't do the rest of the experience, go home? Like, there's no consequences to this task. Like, one of us could have not done it. I don't think they've had any way of checking if we're doing it either. So I could have just put my hand inside this thing and not held on to whatever it is. Or I could just put my hands in my pocket and just pretended, and they would have, you have succeeded at your task, well done.
I'm sorry. What is this all about?
Anyway, at this point, our groups all go off into separate groups. So far, we've been with everybody, and now we have individual rooms. So we walk into the first room, and the first thing you notice is it's fucking tiny. And there's 6 of us, and the room is like the size of a store cupboard. So immediately, all of you are sort of bumbling round, trying to get around each other. And the first puzzle has something to do with electricity. And I'm not going to go into exact details, because if you do choose to go and do this experience yourself, then I don't want to ruin the actual puzzles. But you have about 15 minutes in this one room to do this one puzzle. And because there's so many of you, and it's right at the start, there's just so much confusion. Like, everyone's wandering around, shouting things out. There's too many people for a room this size, and there's too few things to do in a room this size. And because everything requires cooperation, you've got to do one thing here to do one thing over there. Then it's not like people can split up and do separate puzzles. So for the first 5 minutes, I was just fucking stood there, because there was nothing that any of us could actually do when the 2 people who were actually at the stations they had to be at were doing their part of the puzzle. Long story short, we failed the first room. And we failed it because we only just figured out towards the end what the puzzle was, because we started to cooperate. And I actually managed to get a leg in and was like, oh, I think maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that. We all started to work a bit better together. And the punishment for this, Jigsaw said, is that the girl, the CEO, would get electrocuted. So when we failed this and she got electrocuted on the TV screen, we were like, shit, she's already dead. Wonder what we're going to do for the rest of the escape rooms. I guess saving ourselves. Turns out she's fucking fine.
Stop the lies! You're a liar! I need to know the truth!
It doesn't matter if you succeed or fail in that room. It has no effect on the overall story they're telling. She's fine regardless. We failed, the door unlocks, and we just carry on. So, next you get into this little... Basically, it's like this tiny, like, hall bit, and there's a furnace, and you have to... Jigsaw's like, one of you needs to make the ultimate sacrifice. And the idea is that one of your team needs to step inside this room next to where you are, and it's a furnace. And the door closes, it locks, and they tell us a code so we can carry on, and then they burn alive. But when we put the code in, the door doesn't unlock. So it doesn't actually do anything until they've burned to death. Which means it's not a puzzle, it's just putting one of your team in a different room. And the reason why is because in the room after this, they're in a separate section. All it was a pointless way to separate one of our team from us so that they would have a different thing to do in the next room. And by flavouring it as them giving up their life, it just damages any immersion they've built, because there's no risk to any of us. Even if one of us dies in a room, then we're completely fine because we'll just walk in the next room. And I know that none of us are actually going to die, but if there was some sort of built-in consequence where somebody could be removed from your team, that's impacting you, because then you've got to go through the later rooms with fewer people, and maybe there's something else that person has to do on the side, which also creates replayability, because then the next time you go, a different person gets to be that person, gets to experience the other thread of the story. Maybe they had their own little escape room they had to get through, and if they got through all the way, then they got to rejoin you in the last room. Or maybe they operated something from outside the room that helps you, so you don't realise that they're there, but they're actually like turning light switches on and swapping around like elements of your room so that you have like an extra help. The next room was by far the best part of the whole thing, and that was because by this point, we'd sort of realised what it was doing. It was 15 minutes, we had a small puzzle to solve, and there was a bit of confusion again at the start because there's too many people. Our friend Dom, who was with us, sort of took over and started to run this room, and we were shouting commands out and everyone was following them, and by this point we did it, and we finished it 5 minutes early. Got this puzzle done, all the doors unlocked, perfect. We end up in this final big chamber, so it's this huge room. We're in like this small section of it. We have a control panel in front of us, and what we could see is that through the sides, there were 4 other control panels, which means that now we had to wait for the other 3 teams to get through. So because we finished our puzzle early, we lost all immersion, because we had to wait for everyone else to finish. And those teams, like one of them came out a bit earlier, but then the other 2 came out at the same time, which implies to me that they failed. But if they failed the puzzle and got through the door anyway, once again, 0 consequences to anything that happened. We could have gone into that room and just sat in the fucking corner and still carried on. So we get through to the final room, lights come on, and the actress who plays the CEO is strapped up in a machine which has like a reverse bear trap, like the Venus flytrap, I think they call it, on her head. And Jigsaw gives an announcement where it's like, you all need to work together to save this CEO. I thought it was going to be like we had to do all of these various little setups on these control panels, because it was control panels with buttons and switches. But then also, because everybody else had control panels, I thought it might be that our panels are mislabeled and we have to go and ask them what their panels are and work with everybody to try and solve this puzzle. Like, the point is the communication will save the person. But no, all that happens is that the screen in front of you says, on this panel, press this button. So you press the button. On this panel, press this button. You press the button. On this panel, press the button. You press the button. That was the whole final challenge. That all you had to do was press buttons in the order it said. You had a small amount of time to do this in, like there was a little thing that counted down. But again, there was only space on these panels for 1 or 2 people to actually do things, which meant, once more, I was stood off the side doing fucking nothing. There were 2 control panels on the end of the table, and I was like, I'm going to man these 2 panels, because at some point I'm going to need to flip these switches. They were decoration. Basically, for that final puzzle, I was decoration. I was just stood there like a fucking melon, watching everyone else press buttons in all, like you train monkeys to do in labs. Just pressing a button when it says press this button.
I'm having a blast. This is the most fun I've had without lubricant.
We failed a couple of them. One of them we failed because our control panel was broken. One of the buttons looks like it had been pushed in so hard that you couldn't press the button. So we couldn't press that button. The timer would count down. It would say we'd failed. But once again, it didn't matter because I'm pretty sure that so many people failed that we should have failed this room. But the actress, like, her restraint kept popping open. She's like, oh my god, thank you so much, thank you. And then she slips out of the machine just before it kills her. Again, no consequences for anything. Absolutely nothing happens. We could have gone through that escape room with our hands tied behind our back, blindfolds on, gags on our mouths, and it wouldn't have made a difference because nothing in the experience is built in to give you any consequences for failing, except being told by Jigsaw that you failed.
I don't get it.
I can't say this for sure. Maybe if we'd not pressed anything, then it would have said we'd failed. But I'm pretty sure the prop she was in with the Venus flytrap isn't designed to have a person in it when it closes. Because obviously you've got to worry about the safety of the actress. If that thing had closed when her head was in it, I'm pretty sure that it would have hurt her in some way. Even if it was all made out of foam, it would have stabbed her in the eye when it closed. I don't think it's possible for her to stay in there while it closes, which means we were never meant to save her. She just gets saved. We just get the illusion of feeling like we're doing something, which is ruined when we fail at it. Because once we've failed at it, then we know that what we're doing doesn't matter.
Whatever.
So she gets out. And then I think there's more. Like, it feels like we've saved her, now we've got to save ourselves. One more big room, like half an hour to solve it, and if we don't succeed, like, we get gassed, or like maybe the ceiling comes down and squashes us. Like, there's got to be something because we haven't been tested properly. The screen comes on and it starts playing like the twist. The twist is that the other actor that was there at the start, the assistant to the CEO, is the disciple. And there's a bit where he turns around and takes off the pig mask, and it's like, oh, the big reveal. And I literally just burst out, like out loud, just said, wow, the only other person we saw, who would have known? It wasn't a twist at all. Well, he didn't even walk into the room. It was a video clip of him. We didn't get him doing like a stellar acting performance. It was just a clip of him taking a pig mask off. And I think the reason I think this happens, like the reason he wasn't in the room, is because he was probably with the next group. The escape room has been designed, because this is the crux of the whole thing. The escape room has been designed to squeeze as much money out of people as possible. The rooms are small because they wanted to fit more rooms in. So it's like, oh, we could run one escape room experience, or we could run 4 at once, which means all the rooms have to be smaller to fit into the same space. And the final puzzle is as simple as it is because 4 teams need to work on it at the same time. And the rooms are designed the way they are, short rooms that you keep going through as you progress through the story with no possible way to take too long, because other teams are going to come in behind you and do the same rooms. And that's the thing. That's the crux of the whole thing, is it's designed to steal your money by giving you a subpar experience, but with branding on it that'll make you think it's better than it is. And you know what? I saw a Billy puppet on a tricycle be wheeled out somewhere. And there were like various things that looked a bit like traps, like chains and things hanging from the ceiling. Ooh, it was like being in Saw. Except it wasn't, because there wasn't a single bit of gore. And I know that seems like a really weird thing to ask for, because I don't want anyone to get injured. But there were no body parts, there was no blood, there was nothing visible. Considering that it's supposed to be Saw, a franchise which started off as like a psychological horror thing, but turned into like murder porn gore fest. Like, this is what we expect from this franchise. Even the little spin-off Spiral was full of gory moments, even though it wasn't about the kills, it was about the police officer, like the investigation of the story. Even that had the gore in for the people who watched the franchise for the gore. This had nothing like that. The closest thing we had to gore was fake meat hanging in one of the rooms.
You heard me.
So we're in the final room, the little video's played, and Jigsaw comes on again and gives another speech. It ends with him saying, all of you need to press the red button at the same time. So we all press the buttons, the door unlocks, we run through, burst out, and we end up in the shittest looking bar you have ever seen. It was like a single table in front with a guy behind it. The whole room space is non-existent. There's barely anywhere to sit. It looks like somebody's built a bar in a cloakroom. I got out of it and I didn't know what to say because I just had a really shit time. I thought it was boring. And that's the thing you don't want from any escape room, let alone a Saw-themed escape room, is for it to be boring. But it was really boring. I think the thing that annoys me about it the most, so I've already said, like, I had to spend a lot of money to go here. I had to spend a lot of money to get on the trains because I bought the train ticket a bit too late, so I couldn't do a proper split ticket. I had to buy a full price return on the day. So that was 87 quid, 34 quid for the experience. So we're already at, 121, is it? There's an amount of money. But I've already spent that much money. I also have to buy food when I'm there. I buy drinks when I'm there. The thing that irritated me the most is that they completely wasted what could have been an amazing opportunity. Like, they have the license to Saw, one of the biggest horror franchises that's ever existed, and one that's based around the concept of escaping from things. They have that franchise to work with, and what they come up with is a really subpar experience with almost no immersion. It's cramped, and there's too many people going through it at once. The way that you're meant to do escape rooms when you have too many people is that they get separated off into sections. There was an escape room I did once where it was a submarine. It was actually a booking for two teams of people. So you would go in and you would get put into two submarines, and whoever gets out first wins. So immediately, competitive streak. You're both working against each other, and there's stuff inside each escape room where you can ruin the other person's experience. So you basically sabotage their submarine so they have to start doing like repairs. This escape room is tiny because it's a submarine, it's really small. But they put you at like one or two in each section of the sub, which means that you have your own puzzle to do in your own room, and you also have to convey information through and back and forth. And there's certain things that have to be done in sequence. So you have to be like, person in the end room do this, I'll do this, then you do this. So because you're separated, you've got your own things to do in your own escape room experience, and nobody gets like clustered together trying to figure out what to do, and all of you trying to look at the same things and shouting different ideas out, because no one solves it immediately. Everyone's like, maybe we do this, maybe we do that. But there was also no peril. At no point during the whole process did I genuinely feel like I was in an actual Saw experience. Even when there was a fucking puppet on the screen talking to us like John Kramer, it didn't really feel like it because the whole, like, we weren't at threat. Like, even in the second room, when I think it was meant to be like we were stuck in a freezer, and maybe if we'd failed, we'd have been stuck there forever. Even though we weren't, because the door opened. No, like, there were no consequences any other way. We could have just, like I said, blindfolded and just walked through and done nothing. They wasted such a good opportunity. Like, think of the things they could have done with that concept. They could have had, like, a big room with loads of traps and stuff in. Like, even if they weren't real traps, they could have looked like they were. And they could have had actors in a trap with you. Like, they could have had a machine where you couldn't actually see their limbs. Like, they're strapped into a rack or their limbs are hidden behind, like, parts of the machine. And they could have pretended like they were, it's stabbing me, like that kind of thing, to feel like you're really failing. From what I remember, I think there might be a second version of it you can do that involves crawling. Like, I didn't book this, so I'm not sure what the experiences entail. But maybe there's another, like, system of rooms or something where it's better, and we just happened to get the shit one because maybe the other one was more, I don't know. All I can tell you is it was an absolute waste of money. Like, if you're thinking of doing an escape room, the only reason that I would go is if you were a massive Saw fan, and if you really want to see a lot of the aesthetics in real life. You know, some of the rooms looked fine. The first room we went into where we did fuck all looked fine. The final room where the girl was in the trap, like, she sold it. Like, she did very well. The actress did a really good job. The thing was, everyone was just laughing because there was clearly no peril. So it sort of just, like, it wasn't like we were panicking trying to save this person. Who I also, like, just let me remind you, nobody would want to save. Yeah, we're there trying to save this person while she's, like, screaming her ass off, but then she just gets out and she's fine. We're just chuckling to ourselves. It doesn't matter. Nothing. There's no consequences to it. Like, imagine if you'd had to put your hand into some kind of device and hold on to something, and like it lowers like a foam pad or something down to hold your hand in place, and your arm's stuck inside this machine and it has to stay there until someone solves a puzzle. Or imagine if you'd started I did an escape room where they chained you up at the start, and there's ones you can do where it's like a kidnapping experience. Why would you not do that in Saw? It's a kidnapping. You get kidnapped and put in a trap. Why wouldn't you do that?
Fuck you. Fuck you.
Like, we were even workshopping this idea afterwards when we were talking about how shit it was. We workshopped this idea of, like, what if they had said you had to sacrifice a member of your team? They ended up getting put in, like, the furnace or something and disappeared. And then we go into the next room and they're not there. Oh my God, they're gone. Turns out that person is, like, because they've chosen to go in there, they're taken out the back and the actors are like, right, we need you to be the disciple. The twist is going to be that it was actually you all along. So when you get into the next room, we're going to put the pig mask on you, and you're going to stand in there like as the person being tortured. And then at the end, you can take the mask off. Like, imagine how cool that would have been if they'd found a way. Like, even the person who makes the booking. So one of us booked all the tickets. Imagine if that person had booked all the tickets, and they'd said, they'd taken them aside at the start and said, "Oh, we need to just get you to sign something for us," like as the person who bought the tickets. Or check your card or something. So you go into a separate room, and when the door closes, they're like, right, what we're going to do is we're going to video you in front of this green screen, taking off a pig mask and looking at the camera, and then we're going to insert that into the footage at the end, so you're Jigsaw. And then you go through all of the puzzles, like, just with your friends. But then at the end, when the reveal comes, it's not just the other actor we saw, it's one of our friends. And we're like, oh my God, it was you all along. The people who made this escape room, you stole a day of my life. I had to travel across the country to go to this thing. I paid a lot of money to go to this thing. And you took a really cool IP and you didn't make it cool. You made it dull. You made it so that it didn't have repercussions. It felt hollow. And I was questioning whether or not to do a Break Brad on this because I wasn't even sure if I felt like if it was fair to complain about something that, you know, it feels unfair. Like the people put effort in, like it's an experience that people put a lot of money into and tried to try and rake as much money out of it as possible. But it feels a bit mean to pick on someone. But then again, I paid for the experience, and people would complain if they went to a restaurant and got shit food, or if they went to a cinema and the movie wasn't great. Like, I paid for this experience to go through this with my friends, and none of us really enjoyed it. The thing about an escape room is that usually it's one and done. You don't do escape rooms twice, which means there's no way, like, it's not repeat service. If I don't say this, everyone else is going to waste money on it and they're never going to improve it. If there's a possibility that anyone who ran that escape room or is invested in that escape room is watching, heed the words. Like, the problem, you're not like, obviously, people are only going to run through it once, but word of mouth is still going to affect your sales. And you need to do a bit more to make it scarier and more of an interest. Like, it doesn't do justice to the franchise that you've pulled it from because people aren't worried or nobody feels threatened. There doesn't feel like there's any risk. There doesn't feel like there's any consequences to anything that happens. That's the main takeaway, I think. There needs to be consequences. If we fail to save the CEO in the first room, she should be dead. Or you shouldn't make that the purpose of the first room. If we fail to save the CEO in the final room, she should be dead. As I said, maybe there's a way that she dies. I don't think that machine was built to kill her. And again, that ruins the aesthetics of it. If the machine just like when the Venus flytrap thing closed, somebody said, because I wasn't really watching it too clearly, I was watching her. But it closed and then it bounced open, so it looks flimsy. You could change the trap to make it one that looks visually impressive but could still kill her. Like, that's what I would suggest for that final. Like, if you want to do something like that, where there's a person chained up, but also forcing 4 teams into one escape room experience together to save money cheapens the experience for everybody. We didn't get as good an experience because we were dealing with other people in other places. And also the fact that you also didn't take advantage of the fact that you had multiple teams. There were 4 teams of people, but at no point did we have to cross over in any meaningful way. If we were told that only one group gets to escape, then we would have been fighting for our lives. Anyway, this has been Break Brad. If you haven't watched the other ones of these, this series is just my opportunity to rant about shit that annoys me. And it's never meant to be too serious. I don't want to pick any topics that are like incredibly important or like require actual nuanced conversation. I want to rant about annoying little things because for me, this is therapy. I find something that irritates the shit out of me and I rant about it on camera, get it off my chest, put it out into the world, and then I get like a therapeutic response from looking at other people who are like, I've experienced the same thing. Like if someone else has had an escape room that was also shit, they can explain why in the comments, and I can read it and be like, what the. I understand. I can empathize with you. And it also gives other people an opportunity to vent. Like these shit situations that happen to them, that they can throw it out into the world, and other people can reply in the comments and have conversations about how these things have impacted them or ruined things. Like I don't ever want to rant about something incredibly important like world politics or that kind of thing, because I think I'm not the right person to argue about that stuff. Maybe like if I ever did enough research to understand it, maybe, but right now it's like I want to just moan about things that are inconsequential. Like this isn't going to change my life. It's not going to impact my life in any way. You know, in a year's time, it's not still going to be on my mind. But because it was so annoyingly shit, and because I wasted money, like at least I feel like I'm getting more value out of this. So little announcement as well for anyone who's made it this far. I think I'm going to make Break Brad into its own channel, because these videos don't take too long to make. I actually enjoy making them as much as I get angry while I'm doing it. Like I said, like afterwards now, I feel much better. I genuinely feel better. So I want to sort of spin it off into its own channel, I think, which I'm going to do in the new year. So what I'll do is I'll put a link to that new channel in the description, and I'll put it, I think I can put it up there. If you want to sub to that, and then the content will start coming out in the new year. And I'm probably going to update the aesthetic a little bit and make it a little bit more structured, just so that the style is consistent through that channel. But until then, I'll still upload some Breaking Brads to this. Break Brads. Oh, I've changed it back to Break Brad, by the way, because when I made the new channel, Breaking Brad is taken, but Break Brad isn't. So it's now Break Brad. Sorry to all the people who are voting for Breaking Brad. Maybe you can make your own video complaining about how I chose the wrong name. So thank you for watching this. I would end by saying maybe don't go to the Saw experience. And it depends how easily you're pleased as well. I think as I get older, I get more bitter, and it means that I'm going to enjoy things a lot less. Than like I have higher expectations. But I've been to 2 escape rooms. Apart from this one, I've been to 2 other escape rooms: the submarine one and the one where you get chained up. And you know what? Both of those were great. So if I've been to 2 and they were good and one that was shit, and also those other ones only cost me like a tenner. And that's the thing, like, you're making me pay more for the brand, but not for the experience, because the experience is cheaper, and it's not anywhere near as worth it. Right, I think I've vented. Yes. Yeah, thank you. That's it. Yeah, you got any suggestions for this series? Just let me know. The comments section for these are not like, the most I'm going to get is probably 200-300, and I can read those. So I'll read all the comments. Maybe I'll reply to some. We'll see. But yeah, I feel much better. I feel like a weight has been lifted from my soul. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoy these rants. Like, eventually I'm going to get onto pop culture stuff. At the moment, like, clearly, I must just have an annoying life. Anyway, see you in the next one. Have an irritation-free day.